Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila, you get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I'm your host, David Turetsky, alongside my friend, co-host, partner in crime, Salary.com's own Dwight Brown. Hi, Dwight. How are you?
I'm good, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm in the office for the first time ever recording the podcast.
New environment for you. That's good.
Hopefully we'll be good, because today we have two very special guests, Mei and Heidi Perloff. And I'm going to ask each of you if you could give a little bit of background as to who you are.
I'm Heidi Perloff. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global HR Strategic Initiatives and Delivery Solutions with the Estée Lauder companies. I've been in the HR field for many years in lots of different roles and just thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Mei, how about you?
All right. Mei Kim, also from Estée Lauder, Executive Director of Global Workforce Analytics. I am a self-proclaimed lover of data and anything digital.
You fit right in here.
You're one of our people then.
Mm-hmm.
We are self-proclaimed geeks, and that will make this conversation even more fun. But before we get to our conversation, we ask each of our guests, what's the one thing that no one knows about you? And we're going to start with you, Mei. This is your turn. What's one thing no one knows about you?
Oh gosh, I think my roots for the love of data comes from my extreme nerdiness and form filling. I love filling in data in little boxes on pieces of paper. So I do all my taxes, all my legal communications and documentation. I do it myself.
Wow.
I love form filling, which is totally geeky.
So in a past life, were you a census taker? Is that why?
Yes, I did have that job during college.
No way.
Surprisingly.
Well,
Did you
you're
really?
sticking around.
Yes. I did.
That's a perfect
wow.
job.
It is.
Yes, it's perfect.
Heidi, how about you?
So I'm going to go in a different route. I love being out with nature, but for a day, not multiple days. And last year, I was strongly pressured. I would prefer to use the word bullied, but my husband said, no, call it strongly pressured by my husband and friends of ours to go on a 7-day hiking trek through the Andes Mountains in Peru. I reluctantly said yes, but it was amazing. It was the best trip ever. And so sometimes caving into peer pressure can turn into a good thing, which, by the way, I do not or did not share with my kids until now. They'll probably hear this. And
Probably. Yeah.
Nothing like diving into camping head first.
You're a thrill seeker just like Dwight is.
well, I think Dwight is an extreme thrill seeker. I'm a little bit less on that spectrum, but yeah.
That is one of the most accurate statements I've heard about Dwight in a long time.
Yeah, the more adrenaline, the better.
At some point, we'll have to ask about the Sherpa and how all that worked. But this is one of those fun episodes because it gets us back to our roots with data and analytics around HR. Because today, our topic is about the technical skills in HR. How can we make analytics, AI, digital technology approachable, relevant, and engaging for everyone? And so let's dive into our questions. So the first question, digital versus technology, what's the difference?
Hey, we're the payroll baddies, and our mission is to make payroll fun and relatable.
And call out industry when we hear it.
You got to call it out. You got to call it like you see it. But we also got to shine a light on all those unsung payroll heroes out there, making sure we get paid.
Yeah, those are the real payroll baddies out there, and we love sharing their stories and showing them love.
With gold chain and everything, baby.
By the way, SAP is the best payroll out there, and if you don't like it,
Get
For me, I do think they're different. But the funny thing is, I find a lot of people using them interchangeably. And someone I know, who many of you may know as well, often says technology is a thing. Digital is a way of doing things. And I think that's super important. And it's something that I often use when I speak to people, because especially my HR colleagues or business people who, they hear technology and they're like, oh, those are for those people. And I don't do that. But when we start talking about digital as a way of doing things, and we talk about, what they're doing at work and how they're working, even how they live their personal lives, shopping online, right? That they are being digital, and that it's a mindset. And so for me, I think that's an important distinction, and actually a first step in getting people comfortable with, a more technical side of HR and business.
Mei, how about you?
I chuckle because I have a perfect example of me using technology and not being digital. I have a Tesla, and in the Tesla, they've recently got some new upgrades on their software, and you can, when you click the turn signal, you get a little camera that tells you if the cars are on the side on your blind spots. Well, I don't use that. I just turn my head and look left and right, or left, or wherever I want to turn. And then my husband makes that observation, Mei, you have all these technology at your fingertips, but you don't use it. So that's a perfect analogy of having technology, but not necessarily applying it in your life, or even embracing the technology to improve your life. So I think that is the difference that Heidi was alluding to, technology versus digital. We have technology all around us. Do we use it in our lives to embrace it and to really improve it?
And can I add, when I think about digital, right, technology is a piece of it. But we were talking before about data, right? And how much, Mei had just said she's a big data lover, right?
Right.
Analytics and the algorithms. And I mean, I work closely with Mei, and she's using those things every day. That's all part of being digital. It's not just the technology piece of it, enabled by it, but not just.
Well, and I think a lot of us have a learning curve to be able to bring these things into the way we do things. And Mei, to kind of take your example a step further, I've often, especially when I'm giving presentations on HR and analytics, I talk about something very simple in a car, which is the fuel gauge. And the fuel gauge has evolved significantly since the early days. I have a 1954 Buick Century, and the fuel gauge is a fuel gauge. It doesn't even have that light that comes on if you're almost empty. But that light itself is training you that we're running out of gas and you need to go get gas. That was an innovation. People had to learn that if they see that light on the dashboard, that triggers a behavior. Well, because they've never had that before, people who get these little innovations, whether it's the turn signal triggers the video camera to go on, or whether it's that light that comes on your dashboard, those have to be learned in the process of driving. And the analogy back into HR, using more analytics to drive the things that we do has been something that we had to adopt, but people felt pressure because they didn't know how to adopt it, right? From a practical perspective, technology versus digital, some people find it really hard to actually make those switches.
Can I say that it's okay if you think it's hard, and it's okay if it's hard in certain aspects and easy in other aspects, right? I find it extremely easy to embrace technology and being digital at work, but at home, I am useless at my Roku, right? And I am useless on my Tesla. But I think that it's okay. And I feel like we don't want to make our HR VPs and our communities in HR feel inadequate or like, oh, I'm not good at it, I suck at it. It's a learned behavior. And whether you prioritize to learn it or not is that question, right? The interesting observation I've made over the years as a practitioner is that HRBPs who embrace being digital and embrace the use of technology to change behaviors and develop insights, they tend to go farther ahead in their careers than others who don't. So I think it's a good observation where even when we look at high potential or succession planning, the HR leaders that have those tech savviness and the ability to use data and insights tend to float higher in that little 9 box, right?
And there's definitely a learning curve that goes with it. You know, you talk about the Tesla and the side cam that goes with that. I think about the backup cam and how long it took me to get to, and
those little white lines.
Yeah, exactly. And you see the same thing with analytics and HR, where you get the people who you try to help them understand the analytics and they just don't want to do it. And then one day, all of a sudden, they'll ask about a particular analytic and you're like, oh my God, they're getting it. It's finally starting to sink in and become ubiquitous for them.
Yeah. And I've learned to, when I see that little nugget, I grab it with both hands and just say, go after that interest, go after that curiosity, and encourage them to do more.
Right.
And Mei and I talk about this all the time. It's seizing that moment. I think the mistake we make many times is we just start throwing data, analytics, insights at people and say, go use it, right? It's like, oh my gosh.
Right.
But when you find it's so interesting how like nobody cares, nobody notices until they have a specific need. And we're always listening for what's the business need that someone has and how can we bring them an insight or, you know, a piece of information in a way that they might not have thought about. And all of a sudden they're asking for more. Once it start, you know, it's not about the data itself. It's about the value that it's bringing. And it's funny how quick people suddenly adopt. And it's once they're in, right, Mei, they're in. They're the ones who keep coming back for more. And it's super exciting.
Well, Heidi, to that end, you know, think about the analogy from before. So, Mei, you had that thing probably beeping at you saying that there was a car next to you and it distracted you for a minute. And you're like, no, I want to turn my head and I want to see the car coming at me.
I don't trust it.
Right. Well, you shouldn't until you have that aha moment that says, I'm going to trust the beeping that says there's a car coming. I'm going to look at that little video screen. That's the aha moment. And in the same way, what we used to do, Heidi, I think this is your point. What we used to do is send a dashboard that had 20 different analytics on it from HR that said, hey, look at all the great stuff. But people didn't know how to get the noise out of their metrics. They weren't looking at a metric. They saw all of it and they got scared because it was just noise to them. They didn't see the signal that mattered to them at that moment. Nowadays, the way I design, especially with the way I design dashboards, I look at what's the 5 things that tell the someone, and I make sure there's no more than 5 so they don't get distracted. And it's about a topic to try and keep them on point. So I'm not sending them noise.
David, can I tell you my New Year resolution?
Absolutely.
Is to stay as far away as possible from the word dashboard.
Yeah.
Because dashboards is everything and anything under the kitchen sink and what you think your partners want, but it really may not be, depending on the situation and the problem they're solving for. Dashboard may not be it.
Right. Now talk about the technology versus digital. That's one of those things we say, it's a dashboard. Well, it's a technology. Oh, well, no. Dashboard brings up other connotations. So yeah, no, I love that's a really good.
So David, I dare you for the rest of this year, you can't say anything about dashboard. I dare you.
Yeah, so it's February. And the next time I have a client
and you'll have to pay me $1. You'll have to pay me $1 for every time you say dashboard.
I want to know that.
I'll be listening to your podcast, David.
Get out your pocketbook, David.
I don't know if I earned that much money. So I'll have to look at my W-2 for last year to see if, that's. So what's really interesting about everything you just said is that what we're trying to find is a way for HR to adopt these things into how they do what they do, right? But yet they have to your point, Mei, in order for their career to grow, in order for them to lead and grow, they need to kind of build them into what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
Let's go to the second question then. Artificial intelligence. What do you guys think? Opportunity or threat?
I see it as opportunity. I know that there are risks and things we need to be careful of, but I think we have to approach it from an opportunity side. And I've got so many great examples. I'll give one. that I just love. And Mei, I'm going to go right to kind of what you've been pushing on your team. So when Mei first joined us, she's got a small but mighty analytics team. And when we looked at how they were spending their time, these are highly trained people who are, really skilled at the predictive and the prescriptive side of like advanced analytics. And yet they were spending probably 90% of their time on data, on extracting data, on cleaning data, on engineering the data, right?
Right.
And Mei and I were talking about AI and about what I like to call the low code, no code tools. And Mei said, I'm on it. Let me see what I can do. And she gently cajoled her team. Maybe that's not quite, maybe it's a little stronger than that, but strongly encourage them to learn the tool and to use it. And there's one member of Mei's team who was working on something. She's like, yeah, but I'm comfortable in Excel. And, well, it's just, I know how to do it. And yeah, it may take me, some time, but I know it's going to be harder and longer. Mei forced her to learn the tool. She said it took her 2 weeks to master the tool. Coming out the other side, she saved, I think in that one example, she was saving like 10 hours a week, let's say.
Wow.
But she also said, I will never go back to Excel. Like she was converted from that one time. And this tool has AI in it because what it does is every time we're extracting our data, we have to, engineer it, clean it the same way every time. The AI learns it and just does it for you. She has now brought her team. I think where we are, probably they were spending 90% of their time on data. Maybe we're at 50%. And, we're only scratching the surface right now.
The slowest adopters are always the biggest evangelists in the end.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to take the flaky way out. I'm going to say it's both an opportunity and threat.
Okay.
Let me talk about the threat first and then the opportunity, because I think they all kind of fold into each other. In terms of the threat, what's really a threat is HR not knowing what to ask.
Right.
So let me give you an example of myself. I went to HR Tech this year, or was it last year? And I was so blown away. Every vendor out there was saying, we have AI, let me show you and everything. And at first I thought, wow, this is so impressive. And then I went to the best one and I said, let's do an early adopter. They happen to be our vendor anyway. So we said, let's do an early adopter testing of your AI capability. Turns out it was not even like an infant. It was like a newborn AI compared to a ChatGPT version. And so I learned that if you don't know much about it, you tend to get hoodwinked by some of these businesses out there. And so the more you learn, the more you become good at how to use it. Which is very easy to use. I mean, even grandmothers are using ChatGPT to develop birthday party games for their grandkids, right? You can find practical ways of using it, but the more you know about it, the more you can actually assess some of the technologies that embrace AI in the HR business, in the HR domain, and be smart about your purchases and your partnerships.
Yeah.
That's the threat.
But I think I want to ask you a question about that because I was at HR Tech too, and we definitely heard the same things from a lot of the same vendors. I think one of the things that bothers me the most is they're just taking a lot of buzzwords, and the buzzword is artificial intelligence, and they're trying to take a whole bunch of technologies that aren't really AI and use that term to say, but we're doing it too. So I guess the question is, from your perspectives, how do you cut through that noise and be able to uncover whether or not it's really truly things like generative AI or...
Yeah, I'm gonna continue that response. Thank you for that little pivot there because I want to talk about the opportunity now.
Oh, sure. Of course. Sorry.
So the opportunity now, if you listen to in Davos, Satya Nadella and Sam Altman talked about their vision on generative AI in an interview. And one of the biggest learning I had was that you can use generative AI or AGI in the future for general purpose. So think of AI as your assistant, someone that helps you with basic skills. So the way you want to overcome the unknown and the scariness of this is really to just use it to help your work daily. And that's how HR should be embracing it. We are in our team, we are taking image files with words in it and just saying, AI, make me a table from the list of names in this picture. And it was able to, right? But it's the simple stuff, or even, it elevates the skills of HRBPs when they say, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to do this formula with a nested if and a VLOOKUP in Excel. Well, let's ask AI to do it. So we happen to be one of our early adopters of the beta version of the enterprise ChatGPT as Estée Lauder. So we have an opportunity to test this out with our own data. We found it tremendously helpful with many of the very mundane and boring tasks that we have to do as the practitioners in HR.
Right.
So in order to overcome the learning curve is to just think, I always say, have a phrase, there's got to be a better way. When that term comes into your head, then add, can ChatGPT help me?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Can I want to answer I want to go to your question as well, David, because, we're on the practical side of things. So we're not selling the technology or the, AI products or whatever. If it's going to bring value to us, if they're taking something and they're calling it AI and it's not, that's okay for me. If I need the value and I'm going to leverage it, great. We all know AI has been around for a very long time. It only got sexy when OpenAI made it available to everyone. And suddenly, even my 87-year-old father, he's going to kill me for saying his age, but, is using it, right? And using it in really interesting ways. And it's the power of the possibility and all these things that we're now trying to do with that. But I think because it's become this sexy word. I mean, it was all over HR tech. I wasn't there this year, but Mei came back and said, oh my God, everyone was talking about AI. I went last year. Everyone was talking about skills. I was like, okay, but, how could we forget? But the excitement of that is now we're getting excited about all the AIs, even if it's not generative, and people being curious. That curiosity is super important to get people. You were talking about this earlier. What gets people to want to try to, test something to see if there's value in it? There's a curiosity. And I think that's terrific. And the question that we're now able to ask is, as people are starting to get more comfortable in any form, how do we then move them up the spectrum and really take advantage of all the opportunities, including the generative,
Sure.
to be able to, bring value to individuals as well as our organizations?
I think there's a level of curiosity that is going to get people there. I mean, the ability to take AI. I've got a colleague that loves playing with ChatGPT and trying different things. Write me a job description for such and such, and seeing what gets spit out, or being able to do kind of like the no code, low code you were talking about, being able to tell ChatGPT, hey, I want the R code to do a linear regression on such and such data. And that it sort of builds on itself. And, to that extent, I think people are going to start to be able to recognize when they're talking with these vendors and sort of cry BS on some of the vendors. They're looking at it like, hey, I know enough about this to know that that's really not AI that you're doing. That's addition and subtraction that you're doing.
Yeah. It's vaporware.
Right, exactly. But you got to build that acumen. And a lot of times it takes curiosity to get there.
Yeah. And I think where I'd like to see people going as well is I hear a lot of people, saying, ooh, AI automation. Yes, we can get automation from AI, but it's really the augmentation of what it enables us to do as human beings that I think is super exciting. And that element of it, I think, is also what I'm hoping people will start asking as well. Great that you're doing this, but what is it enabling me to do differently or better?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think one of the problems, Heidi, has been that the consumer versions of what AI has been over the last 12 years has been Siri, Alexa, Hey Google. Yeah. And they're not really that much AI. They're as much as it is IVR. But they've been disappointing at best. And when you look at people saying, what's the difference between something like that and the AGI that you mentioned, or generative, however you want to call it, it's because they don't understand what questions to ask it. Mei, going back to your point before, you also need to be trained on how to actually be able to be responsive to generative AI in order to be able to get something out of it. And that's training us, not the artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence is brilliant. We're not. And so until we come around to that, we're still going to be infants in this, right? I mean, those are skills we have to learn.
You know, it's interesting that you asked that, because if you've taken some basic learning courses on how to prompt better, you can actually ask the AI to teach you how to learn AI.
Exactly.
So it's like, tell me what questions I should be asking you if I were to create a health plan for myself, right?
Right.
Instead of prompting and thinking of the questions yourself, you ask the AI to tell you what questions you should be asking. So I think there's a new depth to how you learn, because you don't have to think of the questions yourself.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a good
It's a
point.
great point. But it is about habit as well. I'm used to doing things a certain way.
Right.
Exactly.
Here's some interesting things I've seen.
Back to the turn signal, huh?
Yeah,
Heidi?
exactly. But I've seen some interesting things, practices, even with people that we know who, group of people who are going in and playing and testing and trying different things. And then they're coming together and sharing. And, everyone says they think they've used the, if it's ChatGPT or, that they've used the AI to the full extent. And then they hear what someone else has done with it. And they're like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then the conversation, wow, now that you said that makes me think about this. And I'm watching people together, like co-learn, co-create, like get smarter in a way that is, to me, very, very exciting, because it does take advantage of this opportunity. And it's a scaling, right? A fast scaling of the opportunity, which is what we've seen with the speed with which people are going into, ChatGPT and the other AIs.
Right. Hey, are you listening to this and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could talk to David about this? Well, you're in luck. We have a special offer for listeners of the HR Data Labs podcast, a free half-hour call with me about any of the topics we cover on the podcast or whatever is on your mind. Go to salary.com/HRDL consulting to schedule your free 30-minute call today. Let's talk about data mindfulness. What do you mean by data mindfulness?
I was thinking about this morning, and I think people data is like gold, and it's like mining for gold. And when we mine for gold, we take care in how we produce the gold, refine it, and make it into the jewelry that we want it to be. But I think the idea here is to be very careful about how we think about data. And I think the very common problem that we have is when we do data and analytics is, oh my gosh, the data's wrong. The first thing people pick on is the data's wrong. Right? But then you forget that mindfulness starts from the beginning of the journey. Did you enter your data right? Did you practice good data hygiene and discipline? If you want to harvest your data at the end, you want to make sure you sow the right seeds in the beginning. And that means being mindful about how data flows through your entire ecosystem.
Right.
Also being mindful about how you protect the data and making sure that you understand the responsibilities of handling the goal. So as a practitioner, I tend to also help educate our HR community around data hygiene, discipline, and the ability for us to have to deal with sometimes imperfection until we get to a closer point.
Right.
Because sometimes the little minutiae of imperfection drives us crazy and drives a lot of people crazy, but we have to kind of learn to deal with it. Newspapers get it wrong. Sometimes football statistics are wrong. We tend to be more forgiving there. But when it comes to people data, it's not as forgiving.
Perfect is the enemy of good sometimes.
That's my favorite expression. As Mei is talking, it's making me think, when you're saying it starts at the beginning, I'm thinking about how, like, the damage that can happen when we think we've asked a question, but we're actually getting a different answer. And then I think about as information and data, it starts getting processed through algorithms, right? And the AI is learning, and we thought it was going in one direction, but it lands us in a different place. And this whole concept, I was talking to someone when AI, the generative AI and ChatGPT was first coming out, and there was a whole movement of people who were immediately talking about like, we need to be responsible as we think about AI and how we use this. And, there were these two camps of people, maybe there still are, and ones that see it going in a good direction and ones who see it going in a very bad doomsday direction. And the reality is, depending on where we end, like the choices we make along the way could have an impact on that. But my fear is that we lose our critical thinking, that we just become so dependent on the AI, on the machines, and never question like, well, wait a second, like, is it even the right data? Is the algorithm giving me what I want? And
right.
I'm just, as a technical person, I'm always asking that question. I'm afraid that some people will just say, well, giving me the answer, that is the answer, and never question that. And so I'm thinking of that from that lens.
Yeah, but that's never happened before. Like Google's never wrong, right? The internet's full of facts. So, but that's, and I'm exaggerating to some extent, Heidi, because that's what people rely on to get their answers for things.
As a self-proclaimed hypochondriac, I can't tell you how many diseases I've had because I've gone on the internet and it's told me this is your problem.
Exactly.
You're like, oh my God, I never knew.
Right, exactly. There was a time when we couldn't ask CO watches into a classroom because the teachers wanted us to actually multiply and divide ourselves without actually having a device help. And now they have Chromebooks on every desk. So
you're right. I remember that.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that the machines are taking over and our AI overlords are going to, tell us how and what we can do. And I wanted to test one theory with you. When you were talking, Mei, about data and about its origins, one of the first episodes that we did on the podcast was about how HR data is poor, especially poor quality. And we don't necessarily own, the people who run these systems. We don't own the data. The employees do. And they don't do a very good job of keeping it up. It's not their first thought in the morning when they wake up. And so a lot of times I kind of have to talk to people about making sure that they practice good hygiene, and making sure that the data is as up to date as possible. But that's a really big struggle for most corporations.
And isn't it interesting that it's difficult in corporations, and yet almost everybody's LinkedIn profile is up to date, right? Like we go in and we're really like, and, we often ask like, why is that? Right. What's the motivation? And maybe that's not a fair example, but.
Well, I mean, that might be social media pressures, right? Because you don't want to be seen as being lazy and not updating your social media profiles. But yet your W-4 hasn't been updated since your divorce. So I was speaking about myself because I had to update it. And, that's important.
And sometimes I think visibility has something to do with and how it's become visible. I remember being like, someone throwing me this huge like spreadsheet of information and saying, is this right? And I'm like, I need some context or something in order for me to really be able to tell you. Otherwise, it's just like numbers and information and it just feels messy. I need a reason to go in and check my W-4, but I'm not going to, not going to go in. You got to give me that moment and do it at the right time and not just,
Right.
Yeah.
So, David, it's interesting that you started with the individual data of how people are not thinking that it's a priority from an organizational standpoint to bring it into the corporate systems. But if you think about how we want the data for analytics, it's more the organizational data that we care about, right? Like whether we have promotions, whether we've hired a number of new hires this year and we have to think about our culture and onboarding effectiveness. Or whether our leadership is effective in engaging and retaining our workforce. Those are all data that is disciplined in the organizational aspects of data. Now, the way to think about this is historically, HR systems have never been there to collect the data for analytics. It's always been just a transactional system.
Exactly. Yeah.
So HR, sadly, it has been kind of a little bit behind because we're all talking about selling, revenue. HR systems are usually the last in the line for investments, right? So if you think about how we want, and in the rare occasions that we do have to upgrade our systems, let's start with the end in mind. Right? Versus, we got to just lift and shift our processes the way we've done it. We've always done it before this way. Let's just move it to the new system. So coming back to being digital versus using technology, don't practice your old ways. Think about the technology and how it can take you to the end game and work backwards from there. Okay, well, we need to capture promotions. Okay, what reasons do we need? Right? So have your analytics partner at the table as you design those systems so that you can think of the end in mind.
And I agree with Mei. I'll also add to that, right? Like a lot of people are, even in the AI space, people are just, taking the AI and saying, what can that do for me? We also ask the question, what are the experiences that we're looking for? What are we looking to create? And then how do we bring in the AI, the technology to enable that, right? There's, and because I agree with Mei, like a lot of the systems have been built on the lens of transact.
You need some very visionary people to be able to draw what that picture is of the end that you have in mind, because you do get so focused on one way of doing things, you can't even see your way out of the box on it. And so sometimes that's a draw process that goes with it too.
That's right. That's totally right. Next year in HR Tech, I want to listen for vendors who can say, how are you doing today, David, in the morning? Oh, I feel shit because I just had a divorce yesterday. Something. But then the AI said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Here's some, assistance in terms of some listening tools that you have, or maybe some kind of therapy sessions that you can, and also let me help you with the paperwork so you don't have to do it yourself.
Right.
When did this happen? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, done. Right. And that data goes into the system. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I'm just like painting a dystopian future, but what if that was the case where AI can help us sense things? That's one. Yep. And also help us collect the data as a natural part of that stage and then bring it into the system.
And I think that would be a really cool topic, Mei, to bring up on another episode of the HR Data Labs podcast, where we actually go into the practical applications and talk about how do we put them in so they do not become dystopian. Because we've all seen that movie. We all know how bad it ends for the humans in that. And if you've never seen Battlestar Galactica, believe me, it ends poorly for humans. So, I think that's actually a really good place to end, Mei, and maybe we can have you back on, maybe even closer to HR Tech, and we can talk about what we expect. I'll be at HR Tech this year. I don't know if both of you will be.
I was going to say, maybe you do it at HR Tech.
Exactly.
Well, now I feel like we have to go.
Right.
We shall see.
Exactly.
Well,
let's start driving now, Heidi, from wherever we are.
Yeah, that would be
only if you use the side cam.
Right, exactly.
The road trip to HR Tech.
Yeah, and we as you're going and be the podcast that sponsors
your
you.
50. What's your car again? We got to take your car.
1954 Buick Century. Yeah.
That is the car to take on a road trip.
Yes, and the technology is from 1954. No digital. Yeah. So thank you both very much. You are both awesome. We feel a kindred spirit here because we're the same type of people. We're all four of us very geekish, especially when it comes to how all these things apply to the world of human resources. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having us and for letting us geek out with you guys. This has been a lot of fun and we'd love to do it again.
Super fun.
Love it.
So, Dwight, thank you for being here.
Thank you. And thank you both for being here. This has been a fascinating conversation.
And thank you all for listening. Take care and stay safe.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.